The South African media simply can't stop lying to you. And this time, it's about the Middle East crisis. Let's get into the scandal. So the South African media really seems to have it out for the population, refusing to show them the truth as is and consistently distorting facts to fit their agenda, or rather, should I say, the ANC's agenda. And now they seem to be doing it not only when it comes to local South African issues, but also global as well, particularly when it comes to Israel and Hamas. Now, recently there was a video released whereby Israeli soldiers operating in Jenin, which is actually in the West Bank, otherwise known as Judea and Samaria, had neutralized 2 Palestinian men. But unfortunately, the South African media, and specifically the state-owned SABC, has not been willing to share the full facts with the public. And we're going to be debunking their lies right here. But before I get into it, could I please remind you to subscribe to the channel? It's completely free, and all you have to do is click on that subscribe button in the bottom left corner of this video. Now let's get into it. So I'll start with the SABC's article right here, titled UN says Israeli forces killing 2 West Bank Palestinians looks like summary execution. So of course, the SABC is taking the opinion of the UN. So the UN said on Friday that the killing of 2 Palestinian men in the occupied West Bank by Israeli security forces the previous day appeared to be a summary execution. In footage captured by Palestine TV, very creative name, Israeli security forces opened fire at 2 men in the northern West Bank city of Jenin after they appeared to have surrendered. The men were seen leaving the building and lifting their shirts before lying on the ground in apparent surrender. Now this part is important, which I'm highlighting right here. The forces then appeared to direct them back into the building before shooting them. This line is absolute hogwash. Nonsense. But who could expect anything better from the ANC bought and paid for SABC? Anyway, I continue. We're appalled by the brazen killing of Israeli border police yesterday of 2 Palestinian men in Jenin in the occupied West Bank, in yet another apparent summary execution, UN Human Rights Office spokesperson Jeremy Lawrence told press in Geneva. Now, what's really important to note here is that if we look at other media sources, we see how the story seems to have been distorted in different ways. I'll give you another example. So here we have a report from the Times of Israel, which of course is going to be on the opposite end. They're going to be favoring Israel, where the reporting's a little bit different. So here it explains that the Palestinian Authority accuses Israeli forces of deliberately committing a war crime following what it called the brutal summary executions of 2 men in Jenin in the West Bank on Thursday. So if we go down to the description of the event, the IDF and police are investigating an incident today in which border police officers shot 2 Palestinians who were wanted on suspicion of involvement in bombing and shooting attacks against troops after the suspects had earlier surrendered themselves. And this is very important to note because in the SABC's report, which is freely available on the internet for anyone to read, they made no mention of these links. Rather, they just made it sound as if these were just 2 ordinary men going about their day. And so you already see the difference in reporting here. So, the officers involved in the incident have reportedly said that the suspects exited a building, surrendering, but then tried to go back into the building, violating the troops' instructions, and that only then they were shot. And so what we see here is 2 completely contradictory reports. The SABC claims that the troops directed them to re-enter the building, which honestly makes no sense, and I'll explain why. Whereas here we see a report saying that they attempted to go back into the building, meaning the 2 Palestinians, against troops' orders, and then they were shot. But what we're going to do now is we're going to watch the event, the actual video, in real time to decide which side seems to be more accurate. Now, before we do, just a quick warning to sensitive viewers that while this does, of course, depict the moment when all of this happened, you don't have to worry. The actual incident itself is blurred out. And so any of you who are sensitive can rest assured that you're not going to see anything graphic or gory due to the blurring out. So feel comfortable to continue watching the video. All right, so they seem to be compliant, except look over here. See how this man on the left who's on the floor is all of a sudden reaching over with his hand to the other side of his body, which is hidden from the IDF. Now, this is already a warning sign for the military, because what people with military background will know is to look out for things like this. He could be carrying a concealed weapon. It's very difficult to know. And let's also not forget that the soldiers are on high alert. They are not like the rest of us who are just sitting back in our chairs at our desks or on the couch watching this event being replayed. They are in the firing line. Their lives are at risk as they are taking on people who are believed to be associated with terror groups. And so you need to understand that they are going to be on high alert. They do not want to succumb to any injury or possibly something worse if they do slip up. And so, of course, this is a massive warning sign to them. But let's continue. All right, so as we see here, these men have now returned to where they were. But what's really important to note here is I do not see from the officer's body language at all any signs that they are directing the men to return to where they were within that garage. There's absolutely no indication. And anybody that says otherwise is lying, because here, you are watching this video with me. There's absolutely no indication. And of course, there's no audio to suggest what the people are saying. So where the UN or the SABC gets evidence of this, God only knows, because it certainly isn't available to the rest of us. All right. So here we see it's blurred out. The shots have been fired. But I'd like to also focus on something else that's really important to note over here. So the men try to go back inside. But if we watch specifically this man who's standing up right now, he's going to produce a movement that's also quite alarming to soldiers. Okay, watch him. There, do you see how he just quickly races back down into the wherever it is that he came out of? He seemed to be moving very slowly, and then all of a sudden he just darts back into the darkness. I'll let you watch it again so that you can see what I'm talking about. So keep focusing on him. There we go. Now, so there you have it. That's the second warning sign. Now, what we need to understand here is that the soldiers had apprehended these men. They told them to show that they were unarmed. The men did so. They lifted their shirts. But then all of a sudden, you have the first man on the floor who's reaching over to his other side, which is hidden from the soldiers, suggesting he could have a concealed weapon. And he's crawling back to the dark area he came from. And then, of course, the man who was standing hit the ground and all of a sudden made a very fast movement to dart back inside. And now any trained soldier is going to know that that is a suspicious movement. Why is he darting back inside when the soldiers have ordered him to be still and have ordered him to be there so that they can arrest him and obviously detain him? Why is he doing that? Firstly, he's disobeying their orders, and that, of course, is problematic. But then secondly, they cannot know what sort of booby traps he has plotted inside, or perhaps if there's maybe more militants on the inside, and then the minute that the IDF soldiers decide to follow this man inside, they get ambushed by whoever else he's working with. And the reason why I'm actually bringing this up is because it's a very real problem in Gaza and the West Bank, and Hamas is also active in the West Bank, please remember. And I'm going to show you evidence of exactly what Hamas does in the following report. So here, on the IDF's official website, we have an official report from the Israeli military. And this report speaks about how the IDF has captured intel which reveals Hamas's explosive plans. So, as they write, our soldiers found a Hamas training manual in Gaza. The contents, instructions on how to make bombs at home. So anybody who's been following the current warfare and those who maybe have listened to military experts such as John Spencer or Andrew Fox will know that Hamas is very fond of creating IEDs, which are improvised explosive devices made of all different sorts of materials, some of which are military grade and others which can even be made from household products partially. And so, as we can see in this report over here, our soldiers on the ground in Gaza recently captured a training manual that gives them step-by-step instructions on how to make homemade bombs. The manual amounts to a Terrorism 101 handbook on concealing and detonating all kinds of explosives. And as you can see from this, those kinds of IEDs could be hidden in the area where the two men in Jenin were hiding before being apprehended. And just to provide further context, we see that this specific article was dated back in 2014. And so it's been a very, very long time that Hamas has been honing this craft. They are certainly not new at it. Anyway, as we continue, we see here that the training manual contains instructions for handling and detonating different types of explosives. Page 14 explains how to fill a television-shaped bomb with shrapnel. So here we see Hamas has experimented with many kinds of explosives during the course of its existence. In the 1990s and into the Second Intifada, Hamas suicide bombers blew themselves up in cafes, restaurants, hotels, shopping malls, and buses. Hamas continues to use suicide belts today. IDF soldiers operating on the ground in Gaza continue to come across civilian homes rigged by terrorists with explosives. All kinds of mines, remotely detonated bombs, and other IED have been found throughout Gaza. And we know that these kinds of devices and traps that have been set up by Hamas continue to kill IDF soldiers all the way up until the current year before the current ceasefire went into effect. Now, I'm not going to continue with the entire article. For those of you who do want to review it, I'll include a link in the description box below. But what this shows us is two things primarily. First of all, the SABC is refusing to acknowledge any potential terror ties that these men may have, as well as any potential danger that they may have posed to the soldiers. Secondly, they completely mischaracterized the soldiers' behaviors, as we saw in the video. They refused to acknowledge the suspicious way that the two Palestinian men were behaving in that same video, as we saw. And probably the most ridiculous thing is that they've completely ignored the fact that these men could have ties to Hamas. They didn't obey the soldiers' orders, as we see from the body language of the soldiers. And there is this IED problem in Gaza and the West Bank. And it's nothing new. As we see, this report is over 10 years old. And so ultimately, the SABC is just doing exactly what it always does, filling that same ANC agenda, refusing to tell the plain truth, and instead continues to distort the situation in order to please whoever its masters may be. And so my message to you is to just remain informed, check out as many potential news outlets as you can, and actually just do your own research in order to gain as much knowledge on any situation as possible. Thank you very much for tuning into this video. If you found it informative, please remember to subscribe to the channel for more content. Until next time, I'm Matthew Cohen, and this is the Power Pod.